Okay, hello, John Dove here from the Advocacy Club. So we've just had the first session of 2023, and this was our session on public speaking, that focused specifically on building rapport with the audience. So I'm just going to share some feedback with you now on some of the things that I've seen tonight, and hopefully these are some tips that can help you with your public speaking and presentation skills. So it all starts with the beginning of your speech or presentation. This is the first thing that the audience sees, and this is the most important part or the most crucial part for you to build rapport with the audience. So there's a number of different ways that you can start the presentation, but the key thing that you need to remember is to keep it engaging. So one suggestion that I made tonight would have been to start with a rhetorical question. That rhetorical question gets your audience thinking about your topic and thinking about where you're going next. Another presentation that we saw tonight was in relation to cryptocurrency, and the speaker started by talking or by giving an anecdote. So he started by setting the scene. He said, imagine it's the summer of 21, and you've got your breakfast there, you've got your coffee, you pick up the newspaper, and next thing you see bad news, your cryptocurrency has dropped. So it's setting the scene, and each line is just sort of engaging you that little bit more as the audience while you're getting ready to hear what that talk is about. So it's a good way of beginning the presentation. I think the key thing to remember, though, is that your opening line really should be quite short and snappy. I think a really long, convoluted sentence doesn't really put the audience at ease right away. So something snappy just to draw them in at the beginning. So moving on, another sort of theme tonight was the pitch and pace of the presentation. And once again, this comes back to how you build that rapport with the audience and making your presentation as engaging as possible. The advice that I gave should have been that the presentation should be presented at a speech that's a nice slow pace, because this makes it easier for the audience to follow what you're talking about. It's very easy for most of us in our day-to-day lives to speak at quite a quick pace, and a pace that's too quick for the audience to follow. So by speaking just that little bit slower, it makes it slightly easier for the audience to hear what you're saying, take it in. And particularly if you're in a setting maybe whereby you're in court and you've got a jury or a tribunal that's taking notes, speaking slower can help from that point of view. Stemming on from that, the use of the pause is quite important as well, and something that our speakers did quite well tonight. So when you've got an important point or a point that really needs to be sort of exclaimed, a slight pause at the end just helps really hammer that point home, really helps drive home the point, and gives the audience the chance just to think about what it is that you've said. The pause only needs to be 2 seconds, but that pause just adds that effect. The speeches that I watched tonight were quite well structured as well. So, this is not going to be sort of groundbreaking stuff, but most presentations have a very simple structure of sort of an introduction, a main body, and a conclusion. But it's how you link those together and what actually forms those. So within the introduction, you really need to set the groundwork and set out where you're going with your presentation. So we listened to a speech tonight that was on a seminal case or a new case within the law of nuisance that potentially could have changed the law of nuisance. And one suggestion that I made could have been that within the introduction, we could have had a bit of a background as to what the law currently is, what the typical cases are that come before the courts, and why this particular case is slightly different. The sort of main body of this speaker or the presentation given by this speaker was actually developed quite well, because the speaker took us through this particular case that was before the courts, looked at all the elements that needed to be proven within the case and why the judge came to the decision that he did in that case. And then I think a simple conclusion on that could have been something along the lines of the importance of this case and where it takes the law going forwards. So as I say, with your presentation, it's going to have 3 main parts to it, but it's thinking about how you develop those and how you get the audience engaged and sort of wanting more. A few other simple points that I've come across tonight as well. So whenever you have a speech that involves technical terms, and particularly technical terms that your audience might not understand. So if you're giving a legal presentation and the audience isn't familiar with your area of law, if you're using quite specific or technical or legal jargon, just take a moment or two just to explain what those terms are. If you use acronyms that your audience might not be familiar with, just explain what those are. It just helps put the audience at ease so that they don't feel confused and don't think, hang on, what's this person talking about? Because ultimately, if you continue with the presentation and the audience don't really understand what you're talking about, then there's no point giving the presentation. So it's all about conveying those facts. It's all about conveying the facts and making sure that the audience understand exactly what your presentation is about. So those are just some sort of simple tips from what I've seen tonight, and I hope that you found those helpful.